Yeah, this is exciting times. Already got seasons started in soccer and volleyball, and lots of anticipation and excitement about our opening football game and the beginning of the Scott Frost era. You can feel throughout the state a great deal of energy, excitement, and it's all coming to a head. So I'm looking forward to getting to Saturday. I'm not a great fan of night games, but that's what we drew on this thing, and we'll be ready to play. So, questions?
What don't you like about night games?
It's a long day. That's a 14-hour day for the old AD. Because I'm an early riser anyway. That's the ranch kid in me. So by the time that day's over, it's almost midnight. And but the exposure is important. I often worry about fans and their ability to drive and such. But hey, it's nothing new. We've been doing it for quite some time.
I know you've talked about this before, but you've recently announced some changes to the tunnel walk with some LED lights and whatnot. I guess what was the thinking behind wanting to spruce up that whole tradition?
Yeah, it was really came from the football end, and I certainly bought into it. I think it kind of goes with our theme of honor the past, live the present, create the future. So there will be pieces of the tunnel walk that are traditional and have been part of our history through many, many years, and then there'll be some things that might be more appealing to that 18, 19, 20-year-old player. I think it'll be a tasteful combination, and I, of course, haven't seen it yet, so that'll be my first time too.
You talk about the music that might be used?
I don't know the music. I think there'll be some of the old and some of the new too, but that's only hearsay.
You go with the schedule that came out yesterday into the future with conference road games at Minnesota in 23, I think it was, and at Illinois in 25. How much of a say did you guys have in that, or maybe what was the thought in opening the season with those games?
Well, our TV partners want us to spread the conference games out because they're the most attractive. And everybody's going to get a little taste of that, you know, in due time. So, you know, I really think that our program, by the time we get to that point, will be a veteran program that'll be able to handle that. You got to play somewhere, and a conference game that's not uncommon. When I was in the Pac-12, we had several of those for the same reason.
The having a crossover partner with Michigan starting in 2022, how did that sort of come about, and what were those conversations like among the athletic directors as the scheduling process took shape?
Well, that's a good question, and I'm glad it was asked. When Scott and I really dissected the schedule and what we have been doing since we joined the Big Ten and where it was going, it became quite apparent that the so-called traditional football powerhouses were playing each other a lot more than anybody else, and I respect that. And when I brought it to the attention of the commissioner and my colleagues at a meeting in Phoenix last spring, I said I understand how that was designed to attract TV audiences and also to address the strength of schedule piece of the playoff system. But what ended up happening is we were beating each other up and sliding out of potentially not getting in that Final Four. So I felt, and I think I convinced enough of my peers, that we needed to take another look at that and something that might be a little bit more fair and give us a better chance to get somebody into that 4-team slot. So that's kind of how that all came out. We did agree to what's that that us out here?
Yeah.
Whoa. I'll speak up a little bit. We did a random drawing, and this was done, pretty sure it was in Chicago at meetings this summer, and you can see how it all played out. You know, we do have Michigan for the next few years. That's who we drew. Wisconsin drew Ohio State. And we had an associate commissioner that was drawing out of one side and out of the other of the divisions, and that's how it all laid out. So it's okay because it's in the 4 years of the starts, we're at Ann Arbor twice and they're at Lincoln twice. So you want to be the best, you got to play the best.
So you guys really drew it out of a hat?
Yeah, it was a box, but you could say it was a hat. Yeah.
Do you see college football getting to a point where the number of conference games is standardized, at least across Power 5?
Well, I'll be so bold as to say that one of the arguments of addressing our schedule was that the SEC was putting one and sometimes two teams into the 4-team playoff, and they only play 8 conference games and are pretty well known for having 4 pretty weak non-conference opponents, usually one late November. And so it just appeared to me and to others that had a say on it that maybe that strength of schedule isn't as important. I like 9 games myself, conference games. This is a great conference. I believe the Big Ten is the toughest college football conference in the country, top to bottom. The fans like it, and I think we have a nice setup as it is now with 9 and then 3 non-conference games and a conference championship.
What feedback has the CFP committee given you over the years, whether it was when you were in the Pac-12 and Stanford didn't make it that one year, or now that you're in the Big Ten and none of the teams made it last year? What feedback have they given you on what the league could have done differently, or their decision-making process? Do you have any do you have any insight on what they tell you?
Well, let me go a little further back. The BCS I didn't feel was working. And I got frustrated with that quite a bit when I was at Oregon. Really felt that our team in, was it 2001, should have been playing Miami in the Rose Bowl for the national championship. Now that I'm a Husker, I'm so glad Nebraska was there and showcasing a Heisman Trophy quarterback. But that had to be fixed, and it was. I know people are talking about 8 and all that, and but I think the step we made to the 4 is very good. And will it be tweaked here and there? Probably, just like the BCS was for a while. But I think in its basic form, it works.
But the BCS, you could have technically taken the BCS and expanded it to 4 and continue to have a formula. Now it's just people. How do you crack the code into their brains? I guess that's the question.
Yeah, except
how can you tell them Alabama's not as good as you think they are if they think Alabama's really good?
Now, Alabama's pretty good. and you know, you look at Penn State a couple years ago, and you know, and I found out in basketball, somebody's always going to be cut. And when it was 2, that you had number 3 upset, and now that it's 4, number 5 is going to be upset. So if we go to 8, number 9 will be upset. So, but I do think that the selection process is better. You've got athletic directors, you've got former coaches. I think it has a lot more credibility than before. And is it perfect? Probably not, but I think it's a better model.
Would you like to hear the coaches who are in that committee talk after the the selections are made to give their insight on why they did what they did versus just one person who represents the committee? I
have talked to coaches and ADs that are in the committee, just like I have in men's basketball too. And these people are dedicated, and it takes a big. I remember I really thought I wanted to be on that committee, and was a little upset when I wasn't selected. I think Pat Hayden was back when the first year, and when I realized what the commitment was for him. I had a son still playing high school football. I was so glad I wasn't on it, but I wouldn't mind being on it now. Print that, please.
What kind of tweaks would you like to see in the transfer rules?
We haven't seen the end of the transfer changes, I don't believe. There's a lot more concern for the student athlete welfare, but we're already seeing somewhat of a disadvantage of semester schools versus quarter schools, and where if someone wants to transfer in football and another school hasn't started classes yet, they are probably at an advantage. I do believe there has to be consequences of sitting out a year. Otherwise, we're just going to have free agency, and it's going to be like professional sports, and you're going to see a different roster every year. So we got to be very, very careful. We don't have to. We don't have to fix certain pieces of it that aren't broken. I think the attention was all drawn to men's basketball and the one and dones and the amount of transfers that were taking place there. And I also, having 5 children of my own and 2 that are major college athletes, there isn't the patience there used to be. And I think a lot of that comes from the competitive opportunities from the time they're in 3rd or 4th grade, and pressures that are put upon them, and the lure of the big money in the professional ranks. So these are obstacles and challenges that we're going to have to face as we continue to discuss the transfer rules.
Are you talking about like maybe a cutoff date, rather than individual, school dates, I guess?
Yeah. And there just has to be a little bit more of a level playing field there. I did like back in the day, when they introduced you could transfer to what then was 1AA FCS now and play right away, but you couldn't go the other direction. I thought you're going to end up having farm teams. Hey, let's let Junior go to Montana State for a year and see how he plays, and then we'll bring him in when we have a scholarship. So those are the kind of things we've got to keep in mind to avoid that free agency deal that is a concern to me and others that I talk to.
Bill, did you and Scott have any conversations this offseason about an alternate uniform or about an alternate uniform or tweaks to the
alternate uniform?
Yeah.
Again, we're talking tradition, and we're talking today's 18, 19-year-olds. So the Nebraska football uniform is an icon. It's like Michigan, Alabama, Texas, USC, and that'll be our standard uniform. But there will be a game, maybe even 2, where we will go away from that with something that's probably a little bit more trendy in today's world. I'm comfortable with it. You have a guy that was a national champion quarterback here that wore that standard uniform, so he knows what it means and what it represents. So I think I'm comfortable with it. Yeah.
We're going to be one this year then?
What's that?
Is there going to be an alternate uniform?
Yeah.
Which game?
I think it's the our game around Veterans Day, the Armistice Day, yeah. I think that's when it's going to be played. I'm not, or Warren, I'm not sure.